muri yezimbabwe right now pakatoipa. So pane ma-associates apresident emerson dambudzo mnangagwa vanosanganisira vana temba mliswa vanosanganisira vana chichi vana jonathan mo etc, guys who after a sermon that chiwenga had muswisanda vakomana vakatanga kuti no mukomana you should step down, you should what ndoana imwe kuda kuita gaslight president vaite action because vari kuti aiwa temba zvakaitwa navp chiwenga zvisizvo. So as of right now, no grounds for resignation. Chiwenga, war veterans, and the deepening power struggle in Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe's political landscape has been once again been thrust into the spotlight following a growing controversy surrounding Vice President Constantino Chiwenga. What initially appeared to be a routine church sermon has rapidly escalated into a national political flashpoint, exposing deeper fractures within the ruling establishment, sharpening succession tensions and raising urgent questions about the future of constitutional governance Zimbabwe, in our country. So at the center of the storm is a theme and public defense of Chiwenga by the Zimbabwe National Liberation War Veterans Association, which has dismissed the calls for his resignation as baseless, legally unfounded, and politically motivated. But beyond the surface level dispute lies a much bigger story, one that touches on power, succession, constitutional reform, and the fragile balance holding Zimbabwe's political system together right now in Zimbabwe. So let's talk about the sermon that sparked the political firestorm. The controversy began after Chiwenga delivered remarks during a church service in which he referenced the Bible, the biblical story, King Hezekiah, a narrative often associated with mortality, leadership, and the extension of life and power. While framed as a spiritual reflection, the message quickly took on political meaning. Critics, including outspoken politician Temba Mliswa, interpreted the sermon as a veiled political statement. Mliso accused Chiwenga of undermining President Emerson Mnangagwa, suggesting that the vice president's remarks hinted at dissatisfaction with the current leadership or even ambitions tied to succession. Zimbabwe. The reaction was swift and polarized. Social media platforms exploded with debate. Political commentators dissected every word. Within ruling party circles, whispers turned into open speculation. So, was this just a sermon or a signal? So, war veterans step in, a powerful political shield. War veterans. So, in a decisive intervention, the ZNLWVA Association War Veterans moved to shield Chiwenga from mounting pressure. In a statement released by its chairman, Andrieze Ethani Matibela, the association rejected calls for resignation, arguing that the vice president had done nothing wrong. According to the war veterans, attending church and sharing biblical reflections cannot be construed as misconduct or abuse of office. They emphasized that Zimbabwe's constitution guarantees freedom of religion, expression, and association, rights that apply equally to all citizens, including those in high offices. President Mnangagwa. So the statement went further, asserting that any calls for resignation in a constitutional democracy must be grounded in clear evidence of wrongdoing, not speculation, interpretation, or political opportunism. And this defense is not insignificant. War veterans remain one of the most influential political constituencies in Zimbabwe, with deep ties to the liberation struggle and enduring influence within the ruling party and security establishment. So their backing of Chiwenga sends a strong signal. He is not politically isolated. So talk about religion, politics, and the battle for narrative. Zimbabwe. The war veterans also issued a warning against the politicization of religious spaces. They argued that turning a church sermon into a political weapon risks undermining national unity and eroding democratic values. But in Zimbabwe's current climate, the line between religion and politics is increasingly blurred. Churches have historically played a role in political discourse, and leaders often use religious symbolism to communicate deeper messages. So in this case, the reference to King Hezekiah, a leader granted extended time, is taken on heightened significance, especially when viewed alongside ongoing constitutional debates. And also fact kuti VP Chiwenga vaitivo Mwari vakamuwedzera 15 years Hezekiah, but vakazodzipedza ava padhazi mukati mujeri. All right, that's so the constitutional amendment that changes everything. So perhaps the most critical backdrop to this controversy is the proposed Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment number 3, Bill 2026. This bill represents one of the most consequential political developments in recent years. Among its key proposals are ending direct presidential elections, allowing parliament to elect the president, extending presidential terms, and potentially delaying elections. So these changes are widely seen as efforts to consolidate power around President Mnangagwa and reshape the rules of political succession. Critics argue that reforms could weaken democratic accountability and shift power away from the electorate toward political elites. Supporters, on the other hand, frame the changes as necessary for stability and continuity. But one thing is clear: the timing of Chiwenga's sermon and the reaction to it cannot be separated from this broader constitutional moment. There's a deepening succession battle in Zimbabwe. To understand the intensity of the current tensions, one must look back to Zimbabwe's 2017 political transition. Chiwenga, then a military general, played a central role in the events that led to the removal of former President Robert Mugabe and the rise of Mnangagwa to power. And so since then, Chiwenga has been widely viewed as a key figure in the country's succession equation. His military background, liberation war credentials, and support among war veterans give him a unique political base. But political base, Zimbabwe is the people. So recent analysis suggests that he remains a strong contender in any future leadership transition, particularly within the structures of the ruling party. However, the proposed constitutional changes threaten to alter that trajectory by shifting presidential selection to parliament and extending timelines. The reforms could effectively delay or derail Chiwenga's path to presidency. This has led some observers to interpret the current tensions as part of a broader power struggle, one that is increasingly playing out in public. War veterans, a divided force. So interestingly, while the War Veterans Association has backed Chiwenga in this instance, the war veteran community itself is not entirely unified. Earlier in 2026, a group of war veterans filed a legal challenge against the proposed constitutional amendments, arguing that they violate democratic principles and could unlawfully extend Mnangagwa's rule until 2030. This highlights a critical reality, Zimbabwe. The same group that once acted as a cohesive political force is now showing signs of internal division. Some veterans align with the current leadership. Others are increasingly critical of what they see as a departure from the ideals of the liberation struggle. So this fragmentation adds another layer of complexity to Zimbabwe's political dynamics. So to the public reaction, a nation that is watching closely across Zimbabwe, the unfolding drama has captured public attention. For many citizens, the issue goes beyond one sermon or one politician. It speaks to deeper concerns about governance, accountability, and the future of democracy. Social media discussions reflect a wide spectrum of views. Some see the backlash against Chiwenga as politically motivated. Others believe public officials must exercise caution in their statements. Many are more concerned about the constitutional changes than the sermon itself. In a country with a long history of political tension, every seemingly minor event can take an outsized significance. So the bigger picture, power, control, and the future. At its core, this controversy is not really about religion, it is about power. It is about who controls the narrative, who shapes the constitution, who determines the future leadership of Zimbabwe. The defense of Chiwenga by war veterans is not just a legal argument, it is a political statement. It signals alignment, loyalty, and perhaps preparation for battles yet to come. At the same time, the push for constitutional reform reflects a strategic effort to reshape the political landscape in ways that could have long lasting consequences. Is Zimbabwe really a country at crossroads? Zimbabwe now finds itself at a critical juncture. On one path lies a future where constitutional reforms centralize power and redefine leadership selection. On another lies the possibility of increased political contestation, internal party conflict, and public resistance. So, the Chiwenga controversy is just one episode in a much larger story, one that is still unfolding. What happens next will depend on several key factors: the outcome of the constitutional amendment process, the balance of power within the ruling party, the role of influential groups like war veterans, the response of the public and civil society. So, in conclusion, it was more than just a sermon. To dismiss this episode as merely a misunderstanding of a church sermon would be to miss the bigger picture. This is a moment that reveals the underlying tensions shaping Zimbabwe's political future. It exposes the delicate balance between loyalty and ambition, between reform and control, between democracy and power. Zimbabwe. Vice President Chiwenga's words may have been spoken in a church, but their impact has echoed the entire nation. And as Zimbabwe moves forward, one question remains: was this just a sermon or the beginning of something much bigger? Tiripo pamuzinda wevanhu muri Zimbabwe kubva kuvanhu by public demand. Kana usori part of the family, like, subscribe, follow, share right now. Stay tuned, stay blessed. Thank you for watching.